In this tutorial, we're going to use Photoshop CC 2020 to create a text portrait. They're also called a calligram, and it's really powerful when used to present like famous quotes and speeches, and you can use photos or lyrics by the photo of the person that you're doing. So for this one, you're going to go ahead and go to download those assets. In the assets, you're going to find a Word document, you're going to find an image, you're going to find a couple of grunge textures. So let's go ahead and do a file and open. And let's go ahead and grab that. I think put it on the desktop. Let's go ahead and grab the one that says Portrait from Text Sample. Open. And we're going to go ahead and get this Kurt Cobain picture. And let's go ahead also and open up that image of let's open the text for the text element. So it's much easier if you go ahead and, it's not letting me move this window. It's much easier if you go ahead and clean up all of this text before you start. Do things like take out all of the returns, take out, if you want everything capitalized, go ahead and capitalize all those. And you probably need to copy it a few times so you at least have about 2 or 3 pages worth, because you're not quite sure how much you're going to end up needing. So I'm going to go ahead and do a Control A and select all. And I'm going to do Control C and copy that. I'm going to go ahead and minimize that for now. I need to do that so that I've got my text ready to go when it comes time to put that layer together. All right, so let's go ahead and let's grab a file, save as. And we're going to save it as first initial last name _ text portrait. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in my folder for my text portraits for my tutorials. So I've got it as Photoshop tutorials, text portrait, and I'm going to save it as a PSD and hit save. All right, so the first thing I want to do is clean up my picture. With this one, you really want your darks to be dark and your lights to be light. So let's go ahead and, if you need to start here, you could crop that image. We don't need to crop it. This one's fine the way it is. Let's go ahead and do an image size, and for our purposes we don't need it to be 14 by 9. We're just making a quick sample, so we don't want to make anything that big. So let's change that width to 10. It automatically is going to resize to a height of 6. We're going to leave the resolution at 600, leave that resample on, and say OK. So the next thing we're going to do is clean it up just a little bit more. So let's do an image. Let's do auto tone, image auto contrast, and that's going to make some of it even a little bit more crisp. Now let's go ahead and go to our layers panel. Let's go ahead and make sure that the layer is selected. Let's go ahead and do a destructive adjustment. So let's go to image, adjustments, and levels. So when you do it this way, you can't undo what you've done. That's the difference between the destructive and non-destructive editing. So we want those darks to get really dark. So I'm going to grab this left slider and slide it in. See how it's getting really, really dark? I'm going to take it to about 30 and leave the other numbers where they are. So it's up to you as to what you want to do with it. I'm going to say OK. So let's go ahead and do a Control S, save what we've got so far. So now we're going to start playing with where we're going to put the text. So in our layers panel, I want to go ahead and add a new layer, which is the plus sign that's going to go in above my layer. I'm going to make sure that my foreground color is set to black. Or if there's another color that you want to use, maybe you want to make your portrait blue, you could make it blue. For now, we're going to do black. Let's go ahead and do edit and fill. And in fill, we're going to go ahead and do foreground color, or you could choose black from here. Either way, foreground color if it's a different color, and say OK. The whole thing's going to turn black, and that's OK. Don't freak out. We're now going to go ahead and add the text. So let's go to our tools panel, grab our type tool. And we're actually going to drag out a text frame over the entire canvas. So let's go ahead and drag out a text frame. I'm going to go a little bit beyond so that I make sure I cover all those edges. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to specify some of my typography options. So let's go to Window and come down to Character. And I'm going to choose my font. I'm going to go ahead and choose kind of this Bebas, which is all capitals. Totally up to you what you want to do. The fatter the letters, the little bit easier it is to see the details. I'm going to go ahead and make it 12 points. I'm going to go ahead and set my leading to be 12 as well, because I want it to be nice and tight. The smaller it is, the font, the better you can kind of see through it. I'm going to go ahead and set my type color to white. And I'm going to go in here to my paragraph and make sure it's set to justified so that I've got equal ends. I'm going to do a Control V and paste in all of that text that I've got so far. So you can see it's like nice and tight, you know, not much space between those lines. So I could, you know, do Control A, select all. If I wanted, I could make it 13 so you have a little bit of space between your rows. Up to you as to how you're going to decide you like it. You can change this later, so maybe you want to try 10 point instead and bring it down to 11. So you kind of decide, it's up to you as to how you're going to decide you like it. So now we've added the type. I'm going to go into my window and my paragraph and make sure the hyphenate is turned off. I don't want it to hyphenate. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a layer mask. So we're going to go here to our layers panel. Our layer 2 has our text in it. And we're going to add a layer mask. So we're going to hit the one that looks like a oh, I got to commit my changes from before. We're going to hit the one that looks like a camera. And nothing's going to happen yet, but now we're going to have a mask we're going to put next to that text. So we're going to go to our original photo. And this is like the most complicated step of the whole thing. We're going to click on that image, and we want to do a Control A to select the whole thing, and a Control C to copy. Now we need to copy that mask into this little layer mask box right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to Alt click on that box, and it's going to select just the whole thing. It turns white. That is fine. And we want to do a Control V to paste. And it looks like nothing happens. Go ahead and do an escape or an enter, or just click out of it. And just go click the next layer, and you'll go ahead and see that text pop through. So at this point, you could go back through and change your fonts, change your other elements, get it the way you want. So the next thing we're going to do is brighten this up just a little bit. In order to do that, we're going to grab this masked layer. I'm going to do a right click. I'm going to say duplicate layer, which is here at the top, and say OK. And it's going to go ahead and make that white a little bit brighter so you can see the words a little bit more. It might be a little too bright, so I'm going to take that opacity. Let's take it down to about 75% or so until you're happy with it. Let's do a Control S and save what you've got so far. And there are written directions in the folder. You might want to print those out, especially for that weird little section. All right, so we can do a couple more things with it. Let's go ahead and I'm going to do a view actual size so we can kind of see what it really looks like. So you can kind of see part of that popping through and some of those other elements. Let's go ahead and add a texture layer. So if you go to the folder, you've got a grunge texture. I'm going to use the texture 21. It's saved in my desktop. I'm going to go ahead and drag it down into Photoshop and drag it back up. And it's going to go ahead and put that layer into my image that I'm creating. And we played with textures not that long ago. So I'm going to go ahead and commit those changes. And let's go ahead and change that blending mode to something else. So you can kind of see how you're getting those funky kind of effects happening. Ooh, vivid light might be a little much. So pick the one that you like. I kind of like soft light today. All right, so we can do one more thing, which is we can actually add a color to the whole image. So I'm going to go up here to my adjustments layer, come over here to hue and saturation. It's the first one on the third row. If I click colorize, I can go ahead and play with an overall color for the entire thing. So maybe you want to create a mood that way. So there's a lot of different things you can do with this text. It's a great way for things like long articles. Maybe you want to do some type of special something for social media. It's a really interesting and fun effect. So let's do image and duplicate. Let's go ahead and instead of copy, let's call it flat and say OK. Then we're going to go ahead in our flat one, do our image, our layer, and we want to flatten that image. We're going to take it all down to one layer, which makes it a little bit easier when you are working in other elements. and you can easily either turn in your flat one or you can turn in your layered PSD. I'll take either one in this case. And you need to go ahead and do this one more time. So you need to come up with some type of image you're going to use and some type of words that you're going to put over top of it. Do something more than placeholder text. I think you'll be much happier. So it's a relatively easy thing to do, kind of fun. There's a lot of different ways you can play with it, and I can't wait to see what you come up with.